Week 10, 5 things. All right, game of the year. Now, you know me. When everybody's kind of on the same page or something, I'm like, wait, is it really game of the year? I do think Minnesota Buffalo is the game of the year. I mean, I was trying to think, like, is there anything else that that Bills-Chiefs game, good, exciting, fun stuff, boring first half, but still, although you could argue this was a boring first half, it just wasn't as ridiculous. This game was so ridiculous throughout. I mean, I was trying. I'm like, Tua's 6 touchdowns against Baltimore. Nope, that's not what this was. And it was, because it meant so much because it's Minnesota with this awesome record. Are the Bills really the Super Bowl favorites? All the different stuff, the Josh Allen elbow injury. And then you're looking at it and you're like, all right, it's 27-10, right? So let's start for when it wasn't game of the year and then work our way towards there. Because at 27-10, everything's in its right place. It all makes sense. You're like, Minnesota 7-1, come on. Really? Bills are going to be 7-2. They're going to be the 1 seed in the AFC. Then it's 27-17 because Dalvin Cook, 1 play, 81 yards, takes it to the house. You're like, okay, whatever. Buffalo's still in control. Fluky big play there. Great blocking on it, by the way, to the left side. It's 4th and 2, red zone. Could kick the field goal, but they want to go up 34-17, end this thing. And then you've got another Josh Allen pick in the red zone. That's 3 at the time of that pick, right? Because there was a 4th one later on in overtime to Patrick Peterson again. At that time, and I guess we could just add it up the total. That's 4 red zone picks in the last 3 games for Josh Allen. He had 2 red zone picks in his previous 67 games. So now it's 27-23. Minnesota's got the football. Right, they score at 27-23. They missed the extra point. 13 plays, 66 yards, a touchdown. Okay, so now at 27-23, you're like, wait, is this actually going to happen again? Right, this league. Bills go 3 and out. And for as bad as Kirk was, he was bad in this game. That second pick, that wasn't a pick. That was a handoff to the defensive back. Like he worked across the progressions, came back to his left backside and was like, here, you have it. I mean, it's one of those pictures you're like, you actually don't see that a lot in the NFL, especially somebody like Kirk, who's been around for a while, even if you don't like him. But at this point, you're going, wait, now they're down 27-23. Just mentioned that drive there after coming off the pick in the red zone. Sorry for making it a little confusing. It's lining up for Cousins' 5th comeback. You're like, okay. And some people can be really petty and unfair about the comeback stat for a quarterback. It was like, oh, you got to be behind, you even come back. You're like, okay, but you know what? Like, I'd rather have 5 than 0. All right. And that's what we're looking at here with Kirk. So then this drive sets up. You're like, okay, now it really is on him. The Cook run was great. The previous drive was great, but now it's really on you. You're down 4 points here at Buffalo. Sacked, incompletion, sacked, 4th and 18, closing time to commercial break. The Von Miller Show. Best use of closing time during an NFL game of all time? Perhaps. You're like, okay, this isn't going to happen. And then we have one of the great catches that we've ever seen, Justin Jefferson. Okay, so 4th and 18 after being sacked twice. He converts it to Jefferson, which doesn't make any sense because it wasn't just the one-handed catch. It wasn't that it was like this weird coverage where there was all these people around him. It's that as he went down, David Tyree style, he kept the ball as he was fighting for it with the defensive back. He kept it off the ground and then just kind of ended up with it. To review, teams that were facing 4th and 18 or more in the final 2 minutes of regulation, trailing by 4 to 8 points, had converted that 7 of 56 times. Now 8 of 57. You want to talk about how impossible Jefferson has been, right? Just put some perspective on how special he was yesterday. Next gen, this is Mike Sando stuff here. He had the most receptions with less than 50% completion probability in a game yesterday with 9, which is the most that a receiver has ever had since they started tracking this. And you include tight end and catching running backs, you know what I mean? So anybody that ever catches passes, he has the most. I think the previous high was 6. He had 9 of them yesterday. Okay? But here's what's so crazy about that drive. Right? They didn't score. So he's sacked. They convert 4th and 18. Thielen gets the catch plus a 15-yard penalty. Jefferson again, 1st and goal. Cousin trips and falls. 2nd down, bad throw to the back of the right end zone. Then it's a Jefferson TD. No, it isn't. It's overturned. Then on 4th and 1, basically, at the 4th and goal at the 1, Cook drops a pass, which would have been horrific. It wasn't the easiest catch because there was a lot going on. Offsides, 4th and goal again. The worst QB sneak ever. Talk about skipping leg day, Kirk. Not a ton of passion on that one. So now the game's over, but it isn't. Fumble on the first snap, the third of 4th turnovers for Buffalo. That's 3 turnovers from 10:27 of the fourth quarter till the end of the game in overtime. And now the Bills are your 6th seed as Minnesota wins this one in overtime because Buffalo actually did go down and kick the tying field goal overtime. Then he throws another pick, another red zone pick to make it those 4 in the last 3 games. So a lot of stuff combined there at the end. Buffalo's a game up on New England in the AFC playoff race. Like, how did that happen? And now Minnesota is 8-1. And I know what everybody from Minnesota, you're like, now you got to take them seriously. I don't think the better team won yesterday. I refuse to play that game. I'll even offer up this. When Josh Allen throws the first pick in the red zone and then goes and dives to make a tackle, he doesn't even hit his elbow that hard and he stays on the ground. So maybe he was even more hurt. He's got to stop turning it over so much. I think guys can get a little confident, a little loose, the Mahomes stuff. Although I thought a lot of the Mahomes picks last year were a little bit like on other people. So there you have it. It was the game of the year. It was about as much fun as you get. But as I was watching this game play out, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this result? Can I come in on Monday and go, all right, our world has been turned upside down. I'm not off the Bills. I'm not on the Vikings. You're going to have to deal with that. Number 2, could any of these teams go on a run? I was thinking about this last night watching the Chargers and Niners. I'm sitting there going, you know what's weird is I like both these teams. I like them. Now, I said this years and years ago once. Sometimes we can confuse familiarity with depth. Do I like both teams because I can name a lot of their guys? No, I don't think it's just that, although I've been guilty of that in the past. Like, there's a lot of dudes on both of those teams. And I started thinking, is there what's the chance of one of these teams going on a run? Let's look at man games lost because there's arguments to be made. And I think sometimes the man games lost thing can be really weird. The NBA had some numbers where it'd be like, oh, this team's lost the most people, but it was like health and safety, not injuries. And then that added up. And it's like, yeah, most of your guys aren't even good. So sometimes the man game loss thing can be misleading. With San Francisco and with the Chargers, it isn't. Near the top of the list, which is actually near the bottom. I threw Tampa in there as well. Although they've had the receivers, they look better. I think everybody's kind of waiting on Tampa to right the ship a little bit and win the division with an over 500 record. And then also wondering if the Seattle thing is going to run its course or we're actually going to get 17 games of this. Who knows? Don't know. But if you look at remaining strength of schedule, Chargers are at 20th. San Francisco's 26th. Tampa's at 30th. Maybe another wake-up call for strength of schedule as well. The Giants have Dallas, Philly twice, and at Minnesota. That's the toughest remaining strength of schedule. The Giants' remaining opponents are playing at a 641 clip. The second toughest remaining strength of schedule, the Colts, who have Philly, at Dallas, at Minnesota. They got the Chargers. They're at the Giants. I am rooting for Jeff Saturday because I know Jeff Saturday. I like him. I am biased. I understand it is sort of fucked up in a non-traditional way. And having said that, I thought some of the reaction to I thought people didn't like Jeff Saturday and he beats the Raiders. I would tell him that. I'd be like, okay, cool. They beat the Raiders. Like, that just means that this is the right call. Everybody should do this. That seems to be a bit like there were people taking victory laps on it that were pro Saturday. And I was like, oh, all right. That seems a little quick. We'll see what happens with the rest of that because I think the Giants and the Colts, number 1, number 2, most difficult remaining strength of schedule. Number 3, thing I'm afraid to say out loud. Done this a few times this season. One of them turned into one of the all-time epic fuck-ups by saying Tua looks like a backup after week 1, and now he's statistically the best quarterback in the NFL. And he did it again. He was great yesterday against Cleveland. Great balance. I mean, I don't think there's some ridiculous number out there. Miami actually never ended a possession like on a turnover, a punt, or downs. I don't know. You can double check it if you want to. You'll make it through the week if that's inaccurate. But the point is that they were dominant offensively again. And I still cannot believe the passing overall efficiency numbers, knowing that you had 100+ attempts from Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson in this offense when Tua was gone. All right, so why do I keep doing this to myself? I don't know. Let's not make it a breakout video at this time, though. How about we do that just ahead of time? It's that moment where you're at home and you're watching and you're going, this feels stupid. And it might be wrong. And I'm saying right now it still feels wrong. But I'll make the point here quickly instead of being more vague about it. All right. I'm going to give you 2 stat lines for 2 quarterbacks. Last 3 weeks. This quarterback has 826 total yards, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. The other quarterback has 721 total yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The first quarterback with 826 total yards is 0-3 in his last 3 weeks. The other one is 1-2. Just 3 games, adding up the stats, seems totally unfair. Yep, it is. The first quarterback's Justin Fields. The second quarterback's Trevor Lawrence. When I was watching the first half of Jags Chiefs yesterday, I go, there's actually a few dudes on this Jags team. Like, they're putting together some kind of roster here that resembles talent. And we liked Trevor Lawrence the first 3 weeks, I think. And we started saying, hey, you can start watching this team more. This is a fun team. Maybe we have to take them seriously. And then we didn't take them seriously because they didn't deserve to be taken seriously. And then they don't really doing all that much. They're down big to the Chiefs. Granted, it's the Chiefs, whatever. And then Trevor Lawrence put together this really nice drive where he was going to be 8-9, but they called a touchdown back to kick the field goal, whatever, they lose the football game. Here's what I'm suggesting. I'm not telling you that Fields is better than Trevor Lawrence. I'm suggesting, as I say this out loud, and I probably regret it, the idea that you could even wonder in 2 years who would be better felt impossible, say around week 5, week 6. I don't think it's an impossible question. And that in itself is progress. Number 4, staying with quarterbacks, quarterback replacement rankings. I'm going to start doing this now every few weeks. Look out. Carolina, number 1. Houston, number 2. This Davis Mills story is like, it's just funny because the expectations, it's like a movie you thought was going to suck. And you're like, you know what? Some good moments in there. I like it. That's him. He has the second lowest QBR in the NFL. Washington, number 3. Here's one for you. Who's more likely between the Rams and Detroit with a high draft pick to maybe want to take a quarterback? I shouldn't put Arizona here, but I thought that was really interesting, the way some people started talking about Colt McCoy. Granted, Colt McCoy's approval rating, there's not a podcast you're going to find a higher approval rating of Colt McCoy. I once said, if Colt McCoy were a cologne, I would never buy another scent the rest of my life. So I thought that was kind of interesting, talking about the vibes in general. The Detroit LA one, that's a debate. That's a C block question right there. Okay, final one. Stats to impress people. I love looking at the red zone touchdown percentage stuff because it can tell you kind of halfway through the season, wait, is this team at way too high of a clip, right? It can solve some problems. That was a big Minnesota thing because statistically for Minnesota, there's a lot of average baked in there. You're like, what's going on? Like, oh, some of the red zone stuff's really good. Okay. The worst third down conversion rate in the NFL right now is Carolina at 28.3%. That means they're converting 28.3% of their third downs. You know who's second worst? Denver, 28.5. And why is this important? Because it's a race. It's a race to see who can be the worst third down conversion rate since the St. Louis Rams in 2015. So we're talking 8 seasons now, 8 seasons since we've seen. It's one thing for Carolina to have an XFL guy out there who's really their third stringer. It's another guy to be a $200 million investment in Russell Wilson, $200 million in non-guaranteed money, and you're looking at one of the worst conversion rates we've seen in a decade. And there's always that one early red zone game that refuses to fucking end. You know what I mean? There's been some Jags clunkers. You're like, all right, I get it. The Jags are I don't need to watch a 3rd and 2 from their own 40 just because everything else is in commercial, right? That Denver game, that last drive took forever, and it ended in a pick. Nice win by Tennessee in that one, as they have Tannehill back after the ankle injury, but it looked like he was still kind of banged up in that one.